And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Monday morning's flying weather graphic here showing solid IFR out here over the Bering Sea, running down to the Aleutians, and marginal VFR for portions of the Alaska Peninsula, but more IFR here up across the central peninsula there, on up into Dillingham and possibly into the southern Kuskokwim Valley, and then some more IFR there up in and around Kodiak Island, right on up to Prince William Sound and along the western Alaska Range. Otherwise, areas of marginal VFR here in the central interior, especially upper Yukon Valley, across the Koyukuk Valley, becoming IFR for the Noatak Valley. North slope, mostly VFR till you get out toward the coastline. The conditions deteriorate there, and mostly VFR for the Panhandle, so marginal VFR here along the central and north coast. And then for the afternoon, marginal VFR for the Panhandle here, maybe some VFR down to the south, otherwise just a narrow band of IFR up along the North Gulf Coast. IFR persisting here over the western Alaska Range. It's sort of improving a little bit from the morning hours. And Cook Inlet, northern Cook Inlet, western Kenai Peninsula into Kamishak Bay VFR. Kodiak Island, mostly VFR. And Arctic Coast VFR, east side there, most of the north slope. Marginal VFR here for the western interior, and out to the west in the Bering Sea, VFR kind of breaks in two with a big batch here in the northern areas to the Bering Strait. Even larger zone continues over the southern Bering Sea from about Nikolsky westward to the Kiska Island area. And then for the morning on Tuesday, so lots of IFR for the Aleutians in the Bering Sea, right up to the Bering Strait, and in along the south coast of the Seward Peninsula, into Norton Bay, Nulato Hills, IFR, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, and some IFR again expanding over the western Alaska Range down toward the Aleutian Range, across Kamishak Bay. Better conditions in Cook Inlet, then becoming marginal to IFR here, Kenai Peninsula up to the Talkeetnas, toward the Alaska Range. Still some IFR here along the North Gulf Coast Range. North of the Alaska Range on the east side, central eastern interior, VFR, North Slope and the Arctic Coast, VFR, mostly marginal for the Panhandle. And then that burns off to VFR for the afternoon for the southeast coast with still good conditions. North Slope to the Arctic Coast, VFR, but a lot of marginal VFR here in the interior, better conditions there to the east, lower to the west, as it usually is most of the time, and lots of IFR out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And for passes, Anatuvik, marginal VFR at times, and Adigan, same forecast, occasional marginal VFR there, possibly VFR at other times. And Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR for rainy, windy, marginal VFR. Isabel looking marginal. And for Mentasta, mostly VFR, could be some lower conditions on the southern entrance, possibly marginal there. And for Tanita, occasional marginal VFR, mostly IFR for Portage, especially on the eastern entrance. And for Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR becoming IFR later in the day. And for the freezing levels, about 6,000 to 7,000 feet over the southern half of the state, northern areas 6,000 to 5,000 feet or so. That same pattern down across the Panhandle. Not over the Bering Sea, we've got 6,000 feet here, St. Lawrence Island rising to 12,000 feet down to the Aleutians. And icing, not too much out here over the central and eastern Bering Sea. A couple of batches of some icing moving into the western Aleutians. This one initially, at least, mostly staying just south of the Aleutian chain there. Otherwise, the heavier icing, considerable moderate, pretty good chance here for the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, into the Gulf of Alaska there, and then some isolated moderate icing here, Norton Sound, lower Yukon River Valley, northward there across the western Brooks Range to the western Arctic coast. And the jet stream here showing southwest or west, basically westerly flow here, kind of coming up into the Bering Sea at about 140 knots, more northwest there across the Alaska Peninsula. And 9,000 feet, 50 knots along and just south of the Aleutians there. Otherwise in the Bering Sea, westerlies up to 45 knots, turning northwest at 40 there across the Alaska Peninsula. Some of that reaching Kodiak Island, otherwise lighter over the interior and the southeast coast. 3,000 foot wind flow chart. Pretty light here, light and variable for the North Gulf Coast all the way up to the Arctic coast. Some westerlies at 25 to 30 knots coming into the Yukon Delta, and about 30 knots there, mostly over the eastern Bering Sea. Strongest winds to the west here south of the chain, and pretty light and variable over the southeast coast into the Gulf of Alaska. And turbulence-wise, not too much of anything too significant going on here over the state. Maybe some isolated moderate there, Kivalina, Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, possibly the Seward Peninsula. Southwest interior here out to the Pribilos to about St. Matthew Island, and maybe here along the lee side of the Aleutian Range in toward Kodiak Island and Chillicothe Strait, and that's about it.